Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Paranormal, the New Normal. I'm your host, as always, Jeremy, here to try to bring some normalcy to this world. And as my guest will tell you, it's been a year since the last time he was on, and no normalcy has happened. So it's an endless quest. It's endless. But my guest tonight, folks, as always, is another great person. And in this paranormal world, there are so many people to talk to. I don't get a lot of return guests because I just have so many different people to talk to in this world. But tonight, I saw this fabulous guest of mine from back last April on a podcast guest list, and I'm like, you know what? Let's get him back on. I'm sure he's got new material and plenty to talk about. Let's get him back on. Ladies and gentlemen, the return of Jack LaFountain, paranormal author and one of my favorite guests of the past.
All
How
right.
you
Well,
doing
thank
today,
you.
Jack?
Very glad to be here. Get to visit with you again. Had a great time last time, and I'm looking forward to talking to you tonight. I think we'll have a good
Same.
time. Like I said, no normal has come about yet, but we're
I
pressing
didn't
on
expect
anyway.
I didn't expect it to.
Yeah.
But if it does, then I'm gonna be have a podcast, so I don't know what to tell you. But uh how's the last year treated you, Jack?
It's been good. Been good. I think I've finished 4 books since the last time we talked, uh, and so that's been good. It's been a positive, outcome there. I've even taken the last book that came out last month, actually, uh, took a jump from the paranormal and horror genres over to fantasy to give it a try. Actually, it was
Ooh.
a book that an idea that has been laying around with me and rolling around in my head for about 10 years, and I had done some work on it in the past, and um, kind of the way it came about is I had this idea for the opening scene of this book, and that was it. I had I had this picture of this sort of half human creature headed towards the city, and I started with that idea, and just what was going to happen never did come. No idea what ever was going to happen to make it into a book. What it had to do with the story at all, and it laid around. Like I said, the idea just stayed alive, but nothing ever came of it. Certainly didn't do any writing on it. And one day, my grandson brought home a little story that he'd written at school, as he wanted to be like Grandpa and write a story. I don't know that that's what he was supposed to be working on in class. I don't think so. But he brought this story home. He laid it on my desk, and he wasn't in there when I read it. And I read that, and I said, "Wow, that's the whole story of the book right there. Those 2 paragraphs that he wrote. That's what the story's all about." And uh, got into that, and like I said, that was he was. I think in third or fourth grade at the time he did that, and he just graduated from high school last year. So it's been laying around a while before it finally saw the light of day, and was glad to get to finally get to do that. Uh, it's starting to take off now, so that's been a great blessing to me.
Well, before I get to that, wait a second. Yeah, I'm glad one of your favorite shows, Harley. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you always. And yeah, I mean, well, of course you wait till he was old enough where he could start going to court for copyright, but
Yeah, yeah, that was one of his questions. Finally, was do I get any of the royalties for this book? I'm like, no, but I do have I actually reprinted the little story that he wrote and it's in the book. Uh,
well, that's that right there. That's
so
all you
yeah,
need. That's all.
here that's it. Here's your start. You'll have to write your own book after that, but uh, it,
Yeah,
it
well,
it's fun.
it,
And
you could pull the whole Stephen King thing right with him.
yeah, yeah. Eventually,
Same
that
thing,
that
Steve.
would be nice. Actually, they you know my kids kind of grew up on. We were talking about it this last weekend. I was out in Oklahoma visiting with them, and uh, my daughter said, "Well, I'm really not afraid of much." My dad read Stephen King to us for bedtime stories, and
I I I wish my dad did. I probably would have been scared of a lot less as a kid if he did. I mean, he was a huge Stephen King fan too, but I guess he just thought it was like too creepy and scary to read to us as kids. But
Yeah, I remember reading Pet Cemetery to them.
ooh,
I think my oldest was about 10 at the time, but they loved it. He still reads Stephen King um, today, so they like the story. I kind of jumped over some of the language in it, but you know,
obviously, yeah.
at their age,
I
but
hope.
yeah, they were they well still aren't scared of much, and kind of I thought maybe we'd talk a little bit about that tonight about what scares people. Um,
Always a good topic.
one of my favorites is Twilight Zone the movie. You want to see something that's really scary, and then the have him jump
Hmm.
out at you. Because I actually was told when I started writing horror that I wasn't much of a horror writer because too many happy endings to it. There needed to be fewer happy endings. Uh, I don't know that I've made that change. I I like to scare people. Uh, I don't scare real easy. Uh, but in fact, when people have asked me, "What's the scariest book you've ever written or ever read?" And I said, really, the scariest book I ever read was not a horror fiction book, and surprisingly, because a lot of that doesn't scare me. Um, I grew up with the universal monsters, Wolfman,
Yep.
Dracula, the Gill Man, all of the. I watched all of those growing up from very young age. Uh, I can remember going to the uh, Christopher Lee, Vincent Price movies that double
Classics.
feature on Saturday. Go to the scary movies, and I did all that, and none of that really scared me. Uh, and the one surprisingly, and it still kind of surprises me today because it doesn't really scare me today. But the movie that really scared me when I was young was Godzilla,
Mm.
and I've I've like I said, it's 1954, and I've watched it a few times, quite often since then. And I was like, what was it about this movie that scared me at the time? And it wasn't that I really believed in the monsters. It was, and I think it was part of the whole time frame that was done. Uh, which is the beginning of the atomic age, and um, the possibilities of what radioactivity and the whole atomic age could do and bring about. Uh, to me, at that time, was scary. I mean, it was. I can remember my parents glued to the TV during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and uh, so that was kind of a whole part of my bring up. And I think that's what contributes to the things that scare people are not things you don't believe. The things you don't believe in, that doesn't frighten you. It's the things that you do believe in that at least believe in the possibility that they could be. Um, that really scares people, and the idea of seeing that possibility come to life and kind of kind of reach out and grab you. I find that to be scary, and that again, that's why the book that I said the scariest book I ever read uh, wasn't about any real kind, not the typical kind of monster you think about, and because it was more something that I believed in. Uh, I can remember people lining up to watch the Exorcist, and some people it
Yep.
really frightened them, and other people it was like, nothing to it. And I
See,
kind of spoke with some at the time, and it's the idea those that believed in the possibility that demonic possession could happen, that scared them.
hmm
People who didn't believe that that was possible or could even happen didn't find the movie very scary.
exactly. I mean, it's funny you say that because I mean, well, one, my 10-year-old now 10-year-old son is a huge Godzilla fan. We in the last couple months he just got every toy that came out, every figure that came out from the new movie. So he's a huge Godzilla fan of all the Godzillas through all the ages. Like he loves them. I never got into Godzilla really because I grew up in the '90s and then the only one that came out in the '90s was the crappy '98 version and nobody liked that. So
Yeah,
I think that's part of it. But
probably.
I mean, I do love the new Godzilla vs Kong, Skull Island movies. I love them. The whole universe they're creating with it, I freaking think is awesome. I wish I had Apple TV so I could watch the TV show about the Godzilla universe, but I don't. So it's kind of a downfall in that. But I think you're right, though. I mean, well, before I get into because I do have a good story for you about a movie that scared the crap out of me when I was
Oh,
older too.
great. Yeah.
But before I get into that, yeah, the Exorcist movie. I honestly think it's one of the worst horror movies ever made. I am not a fan of that, but I'm also not religious. I think it was such a thing at the time because people were religious back then, and it really messed up a lot of Catholics. I've talked to so many Catholic people where that's the scariest movie they ever saw when they were kids because they were taught in church all the time that demons and the devil are the biggest enemy you'll ever face.
Hmm.
So to have the idea of being possessed is and I mean, I've talked to people on this show, as I'm sure you would guess, that have dealt with exorcisms, have dealt with possessed people, and it's a real phenomenon to some degree if you believe in it, or if you believe that's what it is, but it's a real phenomenon. I mean, it's out there. There's hundreds of exorcisms performed every year, for God's sake. So who's to say they don't exist? I certainly can't say they don't. I can't say I've ever had experience with one, but I can't say they don't. I can't say they don't exist because don't. I'm not universally knowledgeable enough to know that that's really a case if they exist or not.
Right.
But anyway, the fun. This is the good part. When I in 2017, I happened to go to the theater because I wasn't even at that point. I wasn't even a big horror movie fan at that point. All my life, I never was into horror movies. I just don't know why. Just never really tear up. They never drew me in.
Hmm.
But my cousin's husband and their kid wanted me to go see this movie with them. I'm like, all right, fine. So I decided to go see It Chapter One. And let me tell you, I've always believed in aliens. So the idea of and I never saw the original '90s either at that point because I just never did. It never came across my radar as a child because I was way too young when it came out to ever think of watching it, and it just wasn't replayed on TV that often, at least to my knowledge. So
Hmm.
I went to the theater to see this movie, and I knew who Stephen King was vaguely. I didn't really know much about him at that point. I knew what the movie was about to some degree. Killer Clown, woo! I'm like, all right,
Yeah.
let's go check it out. Holy crap! I literally was jumping on my seat most of that movie because the actor who played Pennywise did a very good job at his role,
Oh, yeah.
and the guy who directed it did a very good job of setting up jump scares as well. Because I mean, that movie scared the living crap out of me. At 2017, I was 30, 31. Yeah, I was. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, 29. I was 29. Scared the crap out of me. The whole way home, I'm looking behind me in the rearview mirror because it's dark out. I'm looking behind me in the rearview mirror to make sure there's not some giant clown or giant spider following me.
Hmm.
I literally got home and turned every light on in the house to go up to my bedroom was because my mom was already asleep. So I literally was turning on every light in the house to go up to the bedroom and like looking behind every corner before I turned it, like afraid to open any doors that were shut because it's just like that movie literally terrorized me for a couple of days. Like, and I've seen it 6, 7 times since then at least. I've had to have, and it didn't. It doesn't have the same effect on me now. I mean, it still creeps me out to some degree because since then I have gotten into Stephen King. I was reading all his books in chronological order. I think I'm up to the Dark Tower Part Two, and I
Mhm.
then I moved in with my now wife and our kids, and yeah, that time to read books is basically non-existent. But
Right.
between that and podcasting, time to read is non-existent. But so I'm still in the second Dark Tower book, but I just the idea, even reading the book, like I would read it like during COVID. I was on that book during COVID, and I'd
Okay.
be by the front porch of my mom's condo, sitting there reading it, like on my Kindle on my phone while I'm having a few drinks, whatever. And like the book is creepy. Like the book, just the way he writes it is so brilliant. It scares the crap out of you. Like it's just because this creature, who is an extraterrestrial, as you find out eventually in the book, can be anything. And to
Mm,
me, that's what's terrifying. A
mhm.
creature that can be literally anything is terrifying.
Oh yeah.
And and I've talked to so many alien abductees, so many people who've experienced alien, people who talk to extraterrestrials. I've talked to all that in this show. And
Right.
and I've heard stories of grays turning into different things when they go to abduct you because they usually nice things, so they want you to be calm. Speaking of a monster, my own little child. But
Lots of information.
yeah, apparently my son ripped off a fly's wings and she wanted to show me.
Yeah, that was one of his books that I thought. Actually, the movie and the miniseries that we were both, I thought, were pretty well done. Uh,
Yeah, I
but
mean,
the book was, excuse me. What the dimension of the book that I think adds to all that is that in the book they spend more time going into
the past.
the different kids, their past, what really scares them. Again, and that's what Pennywise played upon, is
Fear,
the
yeah.
things that really scared each one of them individually.
Exactly. I mean the whole like the things they left out of the movie, him turning into a shark to scare the kid who just saw Jaws,
Oh,
him turning into a werewolf because just saw a movie about werewolves, like, or a kid scared of werewolves. Like it is Stephen King's brilliance. I honestly will defend it to this day and say it's his greatest book he ever wrote because it the monster plays on everybody's biggest fear, which is
yeah.
nothing's more terrifying than that because
Oh yeah,
you're
exactly. And kind of that's the book that I and the name of it is "Come Nineveh, Come Tire," the scariest book I've read. And in a way, although there's no real extraterrestrial monster Pennywise kind of character, it that's kind of the way things happen. They play upon people's fears, uh, to basically work whatever plan they have, whatever their agenda is. But they use people's fears against them.
what was the name of the book? Because you said it
It,
fast, so I
it's
didn't catch it.
it's "Come Nineveh, Come Tire," and it's actually was written by a White House correspondent from back in the Franklin Roosevelt Truman era.
Hmm.
Um, and it's kind of the way that he saw the Cold War going, a play on it. He actually it was a series of books. The fellow that wrote it, his name is Alan Drury, and he won a Pulitzer Prize for the first one in the series, which is called Advise and Consent. And Come Nineveh, Come Tire is, I think, if I have it right, the fifth or sixth book in that series, at the end of the series. And then he wrote another alternate ending to it that wasn't quite as scary, but
Oh,
and so
yeah,
wasn't
I'm sure
quite
he
as
got
good,
dropped.
but to me, but to my thinking. But uh, yeah, the
I mean,
original ending was traumatizing, I thought. But
I I've heard that name before. I've heard the name Alan Drury before. I maybe it's because of him being in the White House. I know that name, but um, maybe. I mean, I was into presidents at one point in my childhood, so that's why I know the name. But or something he did do with the Cold War or whatnot. But I will have to. I really will have to check out that book series because that does sound fascinating. I love things based in the Cold War. I mean, there's a reason I love James Bond, but
yeah,
it's
a
it's
lot of political intrigue, and you get an insight into kind of the way the government works, and how they maneuver inside the government. And it's very interesting series. Like I said, I was hooked with the first one, and um, just kind of stayed around for all of them. But
Oh, I mean, there's a reason I love West Wing because I love Government Insight as well. Like I like government shows. I always have. There's a couple I've wanted to watch for a long time. I just never had a chance to, but I do love any show that's about like the inner workings of the government because it's always fascinating to me to see how these
Oh
people are
yeah.
supposed to think and how they're supposed to. I mean, yeah, it's a lot of it's fiction. You're not going to know the real stuff that happens behind closed doors, but they don't want you to know because then you know the secrets, and then the American people have more view, the view they should have. But it's not the way it's going to work. But
And that's the way this one kind of works. It's maybe not necessarily that you think this is the way things are going to go, but again, it's that possibility things could go this way, and that's what's scary about it. It does play upon that unknown possibility, and coming true, and that's something we tend to be afraid of.
I mean, of course, it's just and yeah, I mean, if you ask me, there's no bigger horror than the government, so I can see that being a scary book in a second. So,
But yeah, I mean, and for a lot of people, they things were coming true that scared them, and they had no power to stop it.
mhm.
No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't stop what was going on. And yeah, that's what builds horror and a scare into whatever story you're doing. And it certainly did that one.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to check out that series. I really am because it sounds fascinating. It really does. I don't know why. I just love that type of. I love that era. I love all that. It's just like to me, it seems like a really good book series, and it'll be added to the list of many, many books I have to.
Oh yeah,
There's
yeah.
there are so many authors I interviewed, and I want to read their books because they sound fascinating as could be. But it's just like add it to the list someday over the rainbow when my kids are all grown in college. I'll have time to read again. But it's the way life works.
Oh
But
yeah.
but so what is the we? I don't think you actually said it. What is the name of that book we were talking about that you wrote based on what your grandson wrote?
The name of the book is Trails of Trouble, and like I said,
Ooh.
it's a fantasy, um, kind of a bigger work than anything I've done before, and it's sort of it's not what it would be post-apocalyptic literature, but it is sort of has an apocalyptic feel to it.
Hmm.
Um, the main character, he has a vision, and he's relates his vision to a the village seer who sends him on a mission, and just the fact that he arrives kind of sets the world on fire, starts wars, uh, starts a whole cascade of or not really people, but creatures being enslaved, and a battle for some political intrigue in the kingdom, uh, or a takeover of the throne, and it kind of sets the world to war with itself, the different factions in the world.
Honestly, it sounds. I actually looked up the cover while you were talking, and it does look like even the cover draws me in. Like, ooh, I'm like, do I see a dragon type creature? That right there is my bane. I love
Yeah,
anything to do with dragons. So, which it's funny because it's funny to see that because I mean that's why, and even Godzilla. I mean, to say those things couldn't be real is kind of almost naive in a way because
right. Yeah.
there are stories of living dinosaurs to this day on Earth. So
Hmm.
I mean, I don't think. Do I think Godzilla's gonna pop out of the sea? No, no, no. I'm not that naive.
Yeah.
Are there sea monsters that might be living dinosaurs? Yes, they're spotted every couple weeks or so.
Oh yeah.
And is there living dinosaurs in the jungles of Peru and of the Congo? Yes, famous stories of that. So I
Hmm.
mean, it's it's not all that out of reality, really. I mean, especially who knows what we did with, like you said, with the radioactivity, with the nukes, like why Godzilla was terrifying. Like
Yeah.
it's true because who knows what we did? Who knows what could have happened with all that stuff we played around with when we weren't supposed to? And extraterrestrials did come down to warn us about the radioactive and nukes. I mean, the whole idea, the whole truth. I don't want to say story. The truth behind Valiant Thor coming down and talking to Eisenhower about it was, I mean, it's a well-known extraterrestrial legend for anybody who was into extraterrestrials. Like, it's a well-known thing that Valiant Thor, one of the Norse aliens, supposedly came down that during that time and talked to Eisenhower and other leaders and tried to get them to stop all the nuclear crap. And it didn't work, of course, because we're humans and we're stupid. But he tried. He tried his damnedest. And and there's a reason that UFOs are seen around nuclear sites all the time, radioactive sites all the time. There's a reason for it because they're watching. They're watching to see what the hell we're going to do next. We're like a TV show to them, especially when it
Oh
comes to
yeah,
nukes.
that's my whole skepticism in the beginning about extraterrestrials, and that was people would talk about whether they saw this or that, and I, not that I disbelieve what they were saying, but why? That was the big thing. Tell me why they're here. They're not just coming here to fly around the sky for you to see. There's got to be a reason that that they've come. And I don't know what I'm saying. That's why, like the extraterrestrial movies that I like are like The Day the Earth Stood Still. And there
Mm-hmm.
was a reason for him to come. Even Independence Day. Okay, if the reason's only to take over, get rid of people and take over the planet. Okay, I'll buy that. One of my favorites is an old Twilight Zone series, and it's called To Serve Man, and sort of on the line of The Day the Earth Stood Still. Uh, Aliens arrive, and they're welcomed, and they supply mankind with cures for various diseases, and just all kinds of ways to make life better. And of course, the alien, he's always carrying around the book To Serve Man. He keeps it with him all the time. And finally, somebody gets a copy of it, and they go to work trying to translate it. And the end of the Twilight Zone episode is the fellow that did the translation running out to stop the first group of humans going to visit their planet, because and he's yelling, don't get on board, it's a cookbook.
Oh, see, I never have actually seen that original, but they did a Simpsons Treehouse of Horror where they
Oh,
copied off that,
oh,
where
okay.
where King Kodos abducted the Simpsons and like they had a book about how to serve humans, and then eventually Lisa dusts off the bottom of the book and it says how to serve humans for dinner,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I'm like, this sounds familiar. This sounds familiar, and I'm like, that's why Simpsons parodied it. Of course, Simpsons parodies everything,
yeah,
but well, all the great they parody all the great horror and sci-fi and the Treehouse of Horror episodes. I mean, God. So,
yeah.
but
Like in that scenario, that to me that's believable. That's a reason why reason to come, and that's like I said, it opens the possibility to all kinds of things. It opens the door to that. And once open the door of possibility, there's always something behind there that can be very scary.
exactly. I mean, and you're right. Extraterrestrials would not come to this planet unless they. I mean, okay, well, there are multiple different species, and they have. I've been told they all have different reasons. I mean, some of them, yes, the reptilians, I could see them wanting to eat us. Yeah, that's 100% probably accurate. Or something similar. They want to destroy us for some reason or another. I mean, who knows? But I mean, it's either to conquer or we're some kind of we're some kind of sustenance to them, whether it be slave labor or food. We're some kind of sustenance
Yeah.
to them. I mean, there's always a reason. Or I mean, the legend around where I live in Massachusetts is they come to Worcester County, Massachusetts, because we have radon and uranium in our mountains, and
Hmm.
they suck it up for fuel,
Oh yeah, yeah. And again,
which
that's
is
yeah. It's
which is
it's
a
something plausible.
logical. Yeah, it's something plausible and logical, which
Yeah.
would make sense. And I mean, I'm telling you, I go out my backyard to walk my dog at night, and my dogs at night, and like I look in the sky, and sometimes I see things I don't can't quite explain, and I'm just like, okay, going
Yeah.
back
Oh yeah.
inside now, please.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I mean, I got enough wild animals I know about around my freaking property. I don't need to think about the things that shouldn't be there.
Shouldn't
But
be, yeah, shouldn't be there that might be there.
I
Uh,
mean, hell, we had a bear attack 2 weeks ago that took like 5 or 6 of my chickens. So,
oh wow,
uh, yeah, that freaking thing broke the door of the coop and everything, and just 5 or 6 hens and a rooster just completely gone. The rooster we found, but well, we found part of them. But I mean, it's just sad. But it's nature. What are you gonna do?
oh yeah,
And
yeah.
I love that you said The Day the Earth Stood Still though, because that's a movie we were made to watch in my science fiction class in high school. The
Oh,
original, not the new Keanu Reeves
not the
one.
new one,
No,
yeah.
the original black and white one, which I loved that movie in high school. I wasn't even as into aliens as I got into eventually, but I freaking loved that movie because it was just such classic and it made sense. It was plausible. The idea of this alien coming down to try to teach humans a lesson, and then he stops time until he freaking like gets done, and then he's just like, "Nope, you're all hopeless. I'm out of here."
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah.
it's my teacher really liked to
It's a great
show
story.
movies like that. It's a great
Oh,
story, it
yeah.
really is, and my teacher liked movies, anything to do the whole semester we did Aliens. He loved all the movies that had to do with that type of thing, about messages that
Oh,
like
cool,
humans
yeah.
should learn. Yeah. He was a great teacher. Mr. Stein, wherever you are, shout out to you. Al Stein. Good, you're a good guy. I hope you actually started writing science fiction at one point when you retired, like you said you were going to, because I would love to actually read it if you ever did. I got to look into him. I got to see if he ever actually did anything, but because it was his plan, and I wish he did because he had good ideas. But I mean, there's so many examples of it too. Like I mean, The Day the Earth Stood Still is just one of a lot of movies from that period where it was about extraterrestrials trying to teach humans lessons. I mean, look at Cocoon. I mean, even I just actually
Oh,
watched that recently. It's why it's first in
yeah.
my head, but Cocoon is like these. It teaches us to. It teaches humans to actually like respect life, like to respect being young and vibrant and like, and that you're not going to get a second chance when you're older to do things you didn't do when you're younger. Like, even though that's what happens in the movie, that's not what happens in real life, and that's the message. Is like, this is not going to really happen to you. You're not going to have extraterrestrials come down and say, "Oh, you can come with us and be young forever." No, it's not going to happen. I mean,
Yeah.
if they tell you you can go with them, 10 to 1, it's not a good thing. 10 to 1. That's at least from what I'm thinking. It's not going to be a good thing if you go with them because they're going to have other ideas in mind. But I mean, there's just so many movies in science fiction that are about that, about extraterrestrials trying to teach humans lessons, and we'll never listen because I mean, no, okay, I'm not gonna say we'll never listen because it seems like humans are getting more and more open to the idea of like maybe we're not the best thing out there. Maybe there's things out there that we could learn from. Maybe there are lessons that we should learn as humans. I mean, it's not happening with every human, but it's happening with a lot of humans. I mean, the paranormal is becoming more and more topic for people. Spirituality is becoming more and more topic for people, and I'm not talking religion. I'm talking spirituality, like opening your mind to things.
Mhm.
And people are realizing there's more in this world than we ever thought possible. So manifestation, all that, people are realizing it's becoming more and more true. So
Oh,
I
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
there is hope.
Actually,
There's hope.
one of the things that really opened me up to possibilities, and people talk to me about this all the time, but you know, I, it was my conversion to Christianity that opened the door to more possibilities than I ever imagined before. As far as you know, not only things outside this world, but things inside this world that uh, you know, uh, Bigfoot, for example, I'll use that. I know people that they say, well, I've been hunting for years. I've been everywhere, and it's no, you haven't. Uh,
No.
there is so much that no man has ever set foot in.
Hmm.
So much wilderness. You don't know what's out there. There could be, the possibilities of what could be out there are endless, and you not
Exactly.
know it.
And okay, I'm just gonna say Christianity and Bigfoot are two things I never heard talked about together, but I freaking love it. And I mean, it's funny because I actually just had Stephen and Leslie Shaw on. They are authors, he is a third generation abductee. His
Hmm.
family's been getting abducted for 3 generations, and of course they've seen Bigfoot as well because aliens and Bigfoot kind of go hand in hand usually. That
Hmm.
just happens that way. I can't. I have reasons why I think it happens, but I can't explain really. And it's funny because they were telling me that a female scientist out in California might have found proof of Bigfoot actually in the last couple of years. She was using this lake in, I forget the mountain range, but some mountain range in California. She was using this lake, and she was just testing it, like seeing what urine samples come out of it when she takes water out of it.
Right.
And she found all the creatures they expected to find, certain fish, certain bears, certain wildlife. But there was a certain sample that wasn't really giving any results for known animals.
Hmm.
And it was primate-ish in nature. It was primate in nature to some degree. So, and it wasn't human. So, what could it be really? I don't know. Maybe the big primate that's supposed to live in California that the government doesn't want to admit exists. But it's
Hmm.
also apparently someone also tested some hair, and they actually got to the right people finally. And these people said like, this is primate hair, but not by a species we know exists by
Right.
that's been classified. So the Bigfoot is getting more and more close to being proven as a real thing for all those non-believers. I mean,
Hmm.
you know damn well I believe. You know damn well from last time you're on the show. But
Uh,
um,
oh yeah.
it's it's just I think the government just doesn't. The government knows they just don't want to admit it for some reason. I don't. I really maybe to keep people from trying to kill it. That's my hopeful reasoning, but I really don't know why the government doesn't want people to know. I mean, I'm hopeful
Yeah,
that's the
I've
reason,
heard
but
some folks say, well, the government doesn't want to acknowledge they're there because then they would have to protect them, uh,
hmm
which causes, cause trouble with, you know, lumber
hunters and
companies and, all the
oh yeah.
environmental impact that it could have.
I
I
mean,
don't know. I
it
don't know.
it's it's funny though. You see these pictures of national parks, and they actually have signs up like about Bigfoot sightings.
Oh yeah.
They have like these warnings up, like if you see one, just calmly walk away. Like don't
Mm,
try to be aggressive, and don't try to feed it or anything like that. Like it's basically like a bear warning almost in ways.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you see those things come up and then say, well, they're not there. They don't exist. Uh, uh,
I mean, it's funny because like the government's like, oh, these don't exist, but let's put some signs up in our national parks, you know?
yeah. So yeah, you never know what's going on. And that's and uh, it's that idea of something that sounds possible and plausible, and you might think it's unlikely, but until the moment that it hits you in the face, and then kind of there you are. And uh, that's one thing that I try to do with my writing. I was talking with somebody earlier today. Is I I even though I grew up on comic books and all the superheroes and Marvel and DC, um, I try not to have characters in my book who are superheroes. That I like ordinary people. Again, that adds to that bit of horror. Is that here's an ordinary person, sort of like me, and this is what happened to them. And if that could happen to them, well, maybe it could happen to me. And I think it helps.
Exactly. I mean, exactly. I mean, I mean, I understand why you don't want to have Marvel. And I understand why you don't want to touch superheroes because one, they've been overdone by in the last decade and a half like crazy,
Yeah,
and two, you don't want Marvel and DC's legal companies trying to say you copyright infringed any. Because I mean, even if they have the same ability or something, they could try to say shit. Like it's just I've talked to authors before, not on this podcast, but on other places where they say like, yeah, I had an awesome comic books that I wrote like 4 or 5 issues of, and nope, Marvel shut it down
yeah,
because it was
I've
too
had that.
similar to one of their characters. One of their IPs got touched.
Yeah, and I'm actually reading one now, just about finished with the book, and the protagonist in the book, the main character, is a wizard.
hmm
Um, which okay, that's kind of along my lines. I like to read in that area. The real problem that I have with him, it's a good. Let me say first, it's a good book. I'm enjoying the book. That's not it. It's just it seems like, and some authors do this with characters. Uh, he's always whatever situation he's facing. That's always something that he's good at, or that plays into his power. Uh, one famous author that I've read, she has a character, and it seems like no matter what situation, I think one time one of the bad guys spoke Dutch or something. Well, luckily she'd taken a semester of Dutch in college and could, yeah, it's like, you know, there you've got to have some weaknesses, and that's this fella. He's a wizard, but though he's kind of outcast, from the other wizards, and that he's the greatest wizard that ever was, more or less. I mean, there's nothing he can't do, uh, and that to me that takes away a little bit from the story. Like I said, it doesn't take away a lot from the story because I do enjoy the story, and it's a very successful one, and I can see why. Uh, that's just to me that kind of takes away from some of uh, the anticipation of uh, him failing or things really going wrong
It,
that
yeah,
hurts him.
it takes away from the realisticness of it. It really does, because I
Yeah,
mean, because one, if your hero in a book can't do something, okay, you're giving him a chance to meet another character that can do that. And
yeah,
that could be a great addition to the book as that character. I mean, team ups are have been all the rage for hundreds of years in books. Like,
mhm,
God, I mean, it's just you're taking away from what could be great. One of my favorite book series, newer book series, actually is written by my first ever guest in this podcast, Brandy Alexander, and it's a Christian fantasy book in a way, but it's basically about a boy. It's about a man who can, since he was a child, after an accident, can see the dead and talk to them.
mhm,
And he basically ends up teaming up. He ends up teaming up with three ghosts to become a detective. And he basically gets involved with angels and demons and all this stuff later on. I won't give way too much of the story, but it's her second book is coming out soon. I was a beta reader for it, and I told her, I cannot wait to get you back in this show to talk about your second book, because oh my God, I couldn't put it down. I made myself read it every day on lunch at work just to make sure I got through it. But that was last summer actually. But the second book is so good. First book is amazing. The first book is called Genesis. It's a longer title than that, but it's called Genesis: An Alliance to Fight the Forces of Evil, something along those lines. A paranormal alliance destined to fight the forces of darkness. I think. I'm
no,
sorry,
well,
Brady.
yeah,
It's a long title, but it's called Genesis it's by Brandy Alexander. It's the first book is out on everything. You can get it on Kindle. It's really a good book. Like, it's just the storyline is so right up my alley with the paranormal, and it's just a good story. I mean, I honestly keep telling her, like, I can't wait till it gets auctioned off for some kind of TV series or movie,
yeah, that'd be
because
cool. Yeah.
I think it'd be phenomenal if they actually did like a series on Max or something for it. But I mean, even Disney Plus could do it because it's cleanish. It's not really there's nothing horrible in it, but it's a good book series, and team ups are all the rage. I mean, and heroes that are infallible. I'm sorry, there's only one Superman. There's not
Yeah,
more than one. Even Batman has flaws. I mean, come on now.
yeah. Hmm. Oh yeah,
So
that's
I agree with you. I agree with you. I mean, a main character that can do everything is just too unbelievable, and especially nowadays. Maybe 100 years ago, that was a little more believable if it was a fantasy book, but
hmm
now it's just like, come on, we've seen so many. I mean, even Superman, the greatest hero ever, has a weakness, and
right.
it's exploited. They exploit it against him all the time because it's his weakness. So, I
Hmm.
mean, I 100% agree with your logic on that. I really do.
But
But
yeah, that's
I, I want to make, because you said you had 4 books. I want to make sure we get to the other ones before we end this, because I have a feeling that you continued some of the series I loved hearing about last time, and that I still want to freaking read, but I don't have time. But
Well,
I'm hoping one of them.
I think I have actually, since last time we talked, I have 2 new books in the Ed Landry, people call it the Moon series, because moon's in all the titles. They're, Bayou
Yep.
Moon, Blood Moon, Voodoo Moon, and the last 2 are called Wolf Moon and Hunter's Moon. It continues with, the he deals with, in one case, a pack of rougarous. He's getting from Louisiana, so the werewolves down there are called rougarou, at least the ones that he deals with. Uh,
Yep.
Also has some, they have some connection um, to voodoo and to some vampires in the story. Uh, the And then in Hunter's Moon, actually, uh, it gets it comes across uh, a group of women who are into sort of a mix of voodoo and ancient Mayan religion, and are use an idol that they find in Mexico to become werecats.
Ooh.
And he has to deal with them. And again, they're the they're mixed up with the voodoo queen in New Orleans, and so it's a combination of battling them and this one stranger that nobody really knows what he is, or where he where he comes from, but uh, they kind of know what he's after. Uh, he's after a book that was written by one of the characters that show up in the Book of Enoch. That
Ooh.
they've written a book of spells, and this guy is after the book, and so that comes into play. And it will, though. Actually, I'm halfway. Well, not quite halfway through writing book number 7 in that series right now. But again,
Nice.
that's one of the Ed Landry, my hero in that series. Um, the series starts off with him having to make a decision ordinary people sometime have to make. He finds out who the rougarou is in his town, and he puts an end to the rougarou, or the rougarou dies anyway. Uh, but then the question comes up: well, where did it come from? It didn't
Yep.
just drop out of the air. How did this thing get here?
Hmm.
And through investigation, they find out through different um, spells and things that there are people who can turn you into a rougarou, and that's what happened. The fellow that was the rougarou wanted to be turned into one, which kind of ended when he died. But um, the problem was there's somebody out there that can make another one whenever they want to, and what do we do about him? Because we can't just let him go.
Hmm.
Uh, Even though, like in the character's a sheriff, he's got no legal grounds to do anything to him. But does
Classic
he have a
dilemma.
moral responsibility to really make his town safe by getting rid of this guy?
Which
So
is
that,
a class. It's a classic dilemma in that whole fantasy, sci-fi fantasy realm of paranormal realm of dealing with creatures like that. Like, do you like? Is it right to just take their lives? I can't just throw them behind bars for the rest of their life and leave them there and give them 2 meals a day, whatever. Like, it's
yeah,
just it's a moral dilemma, and that's what good characters are built on, because it's how they handle it. And I'm sure you have a very satisfying solution to it in the book, which I don't expect you to give away. Let people read the book and find
I
out
won't
what
I
happens.
give away that one. Actually, yeah, because that really sets up the rest of the books by
Mm,
the decision that he makes. But yeah, I did that one, and I did I had a Western series that also had werewolves.
yep.
I described people as cowboys, Indians, and werewolves. And I did write the third book in that trilogy. Uh, since we talked last time, and kind of tried to wrap up that story. Although um, some people who have been following the series and my editor said no, that's not the end of it. Uh,
Well, I mean,
you left
if people
people
want more,
alive, which is I don't always do, but you've left people alive. We can do something else with this, and so
which that's the Red River series, if I'm not mistaken, right?
right.
Yeah. Which I mean, see, it's funny because I had a paranormal author, another paranormal author on my show a while back, and he actually was on my music show too, randomly enough. Dick Wybrow. He writes a book series called Wolf,
Oh,
and it's funny because in his story, he did something different I'd never seen done with werewolves before, and it kind of intrigued me. His books are now on my list as well as all your books are. So it's a long list. It's a long list. It's one
well,
of those
yeah.
ancient Roman.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of those ancient Roman scrolls. But basically, in his books, he- as like in the beginning of the moon phases, like when the moon's not near a full moon yet,
Right.
the 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 werewolf goes through different stages. In the beginning, he's a small dog like a poodle or a Jack Terrier. He turns into a medium dog like a golden retriever or something like that. He turns into a large dog like a husky or a mastiff, and then like eventually at the full moon, he turns into a full blown wolf. So
Oh,
it's kind of it's
yeah. Very
it's kind of
interesting.
it's kind of funny, and I mean his book is a comedy book as well, so it's meant to be hilarious. And
Oh, cool.
he I think he wrote 4 books so far in the series, and it was it's on my list because it sounds like a fascinating book. I think I actually downloaded all 4 of his books for free on my Kindle. I just never got a chance to actually uh even start the first one yet. But
Oh,
it's
yeah.
just
Yeah. It sounds good. I like that combination of horror and some comedy with it. Uh, Dean Koontz's Odd Thomas series. Uh,
another one on my list.
I
Yeah,
like some of the maybe the last one or two are not as good as the original Odd Thomas, but the original Odd Thomas book, the first one in that series, that just cracked me up. Reading, he's seeing ghosts and all this, and just his whole character. You know, his great ambition is to be a fry cook, and he's involved
uh,
in all these things. It's just it's a great combination of horror, suspense, and comedy.
which I mean I enjoy that too, especially in movies when there's horror comedies. Like I enjoy the hell out of them. I mean, what's the movie? I mean, Cabin in the Woods is one of my favorite horror movies because it's so funny, but it's so realistically terrifying because it's every creature we think about in the paranormal world being controlled by the government, which is who knows how true that is, and that's the scary part. But
Right.
I mean, it's fascinating. I mean, I love horror comedy. I mean, I've been getting into horror a lot in the last couple of years. I do horror movie brackets on this show every so often, and right now, me and the few people I know who are always on them with me are getting ready for the top 50 serial killer movie bracket of all time. So we took a step
Oh.
back from like the supernatural horror and went more to like realistic horror in a way,
Oh.
I guess.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
because that was what one of my participants chose, and it won the wheel spin. So 50 serial killer movies. It's taken me months to get through them, and I want to do this bracket like 3 months ago, but it's taking so much time to watch all these movies, so much time. But I'm
Mhm.
pushing through it. I'm pushing through it. But I mean, I horror is a very interesting genre because there's a lot of good horror and there's a lot of bad horror. There's
Oh,
a lot.
yeah.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
both. There's a lot of both. I mean, I've seen some movies that I just wasted an hour and a half, 2 hours of my life, and I'm never getting it back. But
Yeah,
but
I think
then
it
again, there's
kind of works against
okay.
me as being an author sometimes. Somebody asked me the other day about horror movies that I've watched lately, and I said, "Well, I've watched 10 minutes of a lot of them." Have I sit and watched many through to the end? Not a lot, not nearly as many as I've started watching, but uh,
I
I don't
mean,
know. It seems to me that a lot of the movies that I watch, especially in that case, is that, when you're writing a book, the idea is to hook people right away. You got to hook the reader right away to keep them with you, and I don't
Yep.
find that happening in a lot of movies that I've watched lately.
Because especially with streaming services lately, I think the way they anticipate that the person, if they start watching something, is going to eventually finish it. It may be a week or two down the road, but eventually they're going to go with their continue watching and be like, "Oh, I never finished that. Let me finish that." And I mean, I love the amount of horror that's getting turned out lately because it's letting a lot more horror genres that I love get turned out. Like the amount of Bigfoot horror movies that come out lately has been ridiculous. I
Oh yeah.
haven't seen all of them, but I mean, it also allows like a lot of shark movies to come out, which that's one of my favorite horror genres is sharks. I don't know why. I love known creatures in horror movies.
Mm.
Like it's entertaining. But I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good horror movie I watched recently that's not a serial killer movie, but that's been a lot of serial killer movies. But I mean, I mean, everything I've been watching lately has been serial killers or before that, it was actually 80s alien movies, so ain't no new ones there. They're just
Yeah.
I discovered some classic 80s alien movies I freaking love, like Cocoon and Enemy Mine and stuff like that. Like there's been a lot
Right.
Invaders from Mars, like the 80s version. Like I freaking
Well,
the Toby Hooper version. Like I discovered a lot of movies like from the 80s I love that are alien movies. I just actually finished watching last night, was it? Yeah, last night I just finished watching Summer of Sam, the Spike Lee movie about Son of Sam,
hmm.
and really good movie. I mean, I love Spike Lee, so I wasn't that surprised that it was a good movie, but
Right.
I didn't expect him to do a good movie about a serial killer, and it just kind of blew me away that he did. Like I loved it. I mean, just such a good movie, and I've seen a lot of I've seen a lot of horror movies that I freaking love lately. Not lately, but in the last like year, I've seen a lot of horror movies that I actually like really respected and loved. But
Hmm.
that's 20% of them maybe. The other 80% I'm just like, oh my god, this is horrible. But I have to watch all of it because I'm going to be talking about it on a podcast. I have to watch
Yeah.
all of it because I have
Yeah.
to
We
know
got to
what I'm
watch
talking
them all.
about. And so
Right.
I'll grin and bear it. I'll edit some podcast episodes during the bad ones because why not? But it's just it's horror movies are hit or miss. I will freaking agree with that. They're hit or miss, and there's so many coming out nowadays that a lot of them are miss. It's not like it used to be where back in the '80s, even the bad ones were still good because they're funny even though they're not supposed to be.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
now it's just oh this is garbage. This is garbage. Why am I watching this?
Yeah.
Actually, I'll
Was
leave it
what
up on this.
a
Oh
schlock sci-fi movies. I found a whole category of them on TV and
oh
started
yeah.
watching those. Yeah, that was fun, really.
Yeah,
And they're so bad they're entertaining.
oh yeah, like the Sharknado movies. Like they're so
Yeah,
bad, they're actually good. Like
yeah,
I freaking I love the first three of those. I gotta finish watching the series, but I freaking love the first three of those. It's so funny. It's just like, especially when they all start getting chainsaws for arms and they're just slicing the sharks in half and stuff. It's just like, oh come on. This is so unrealistic at this point, but it's just amazingly funny.
yeah.
Love it. I mean, I will say the newest horror movie I've seen that's good is Blood and Honey, the Winnie the Pooh horror movie.
Oh, I haven't seen that. Okay.
Oh, they're making a sequel right now. Actually, it's coming out either this fall or next year, but it's a really good movie.
Okay, yeah,
And
I was reading about the sequel coming out. That's what okay. Yeah.
the first one was actually really good. I enjoyed it. I mean, especially as all of us grew up with that character as like a family household name, and
Yeah.
to see it in a horror movie is a whole nother dimension. It's kind of cool. But that and in the same aspect, like the Mean One, they did like a Grinch horror movie a couple winters ago, and
Mhm.
I think they planned on it being, but it's freaking just hilarious. Like because Grinch is in public domain, so they can't say Grinch. So that's why it's called the Mean One because every time they go to say, oh, it's that Grinch, like right before they say Grinch, a truck goes by or a horn blares or something. Like it's just funny. It's funny shit.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah, that's
But
funny.
Yeah, so those are some recent ones I found that were very enjoyable. But well, I do want to thank you for coming back on, Jack. It's been a fun hour talking to you as
Oh
always,
yeah, thanks for having
well,
me. I sure I've enjoyed it really.
and we'll have to get you on a year to when you get a couple more books out and talk about those, and I'm
Oh
sure we'll
yeah.
have more movies to talk about by then. So,
Oh yeah.
uh, always a good
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
But
There any Bigfoot fans out there? We're going to be at the Washita Bigfoot Festival in Mena, Arkansas in September, and the Cross Upper Cumberland Bigfoot Festival in Crossville, Tennessee in October.
see, why do I not live near any of these states where there's actually Bigfoot things? God damn it! But but where can my for all my listeners who didn't listen to the old episode, which shame, but for those who haven't, where can they find you? Where can they find your books?
They can find me at it's jacklafountainauthor.com, and all of my books are on there. Um, or they can also find me. I'm also a partner in a publishing company, so you can find me at houseofhonorbooks.com, where there's not only my books, but we were talking about serial killers. We have a great serial killer story that we published. It's called Johnny Be Good. Um,
Ooh.
yeah, check it out. I think you'll like it. She's the lady that wrote it is an outstanding new author. She's very good at it.
Oh, it actually sounds vaguely familiar. I'll have to check it out, but yeah, that's okay. Going on the list. Going on the list. But and of course, listeners, his link will be in the description of the episode, of course, as always. So you guys can just click and go, make it easy for you. And if my listeners don't know where to find me by now, my God, it's been 2 years. You disappoint me. But it's all in the outro. Check it out. You'll hear it all again. And we'll see Jack in about a year, hopefully.
All
Hopefully,
right.
around then.
Look forward to it.
And for everybody who watched tonight, thank you. We had a pretty big audience tonight, and we got a lot of likes. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. And please go check out Jack's work. It's all. I swear to God, his stuff's in the top of my list because it all looks so damn good. I've been wanting to read his stuff for a year now, and it's still sitting on the top of the list. Like someday, but
Yeah.
uh, well, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you everybody who listened, and I'll see you tomorrow with another interview. Have a good one.